In 1906, explorer Marcus Whitfield disappeared in the Canadian wilderness with his entire team of experienced outdoorsmen. Decades later, his final photograph was found buried beneath an old cabin, showing the expedition's last camp in haunting detail. But when forensic experts counted the shadows in that image, they discovered something that should have been impossible. What if the truth behind a photograph isn't in the light, but in the shadows? The story begins with what seemed like a routine archaeological discovery. In 1987, construction workers renovating an old cabin near Lake Superior found a sealed metal container hidden beneath the floorboards. The container itself was unusual, made of thick steel and wrapped in oiled leather to protect against moisture. Inside was a collection of photographs, journal entries, expedition maps, and detailed notes belonging to Marcus Whitfield, a renowned explorer who had vanished without a trace 81 years earlier. Whitfield was no amateur adventurer seeking fame or fortune. By 1906, he had already mapped unexplored regions of Alaska, documented several indigenous settlements that had never been contacted by outsiders, and published 2 acclaimed books about frontier survival techniques. His meticulous attention to detail and scientific approach had earned him respect among both academic circles and fellow explorers. His final expedition was supposed to be different. He planned to spend 3 months in the remote forests of northern Ontario, searching for what he called the lost settlement of the Anishinaabe people. The expedition team consisted of 5 men, each chosen for specific expertise. Besides Whitfield himself, there was his longtime partner, James Crawford, an experienced navigator and survival expert. David Chen served as the expedition photographer and equipment specialist. William Standing Bear was their indigenous guide, whose knowledge of the northern Ontario wilderness was unmatched. Thomas Reed handled supplies management and logistics. All 5 men were experienced outdoorsmen with proven track records in dangerous terrain. None of them were ever seen again after they departed from Thunder Bay in September 1906. For decades, their disappearance remained one of Canada's greatest unsolved mysteries. Multiple search parties combed the wilderness for months, following every possible trail and investigating countless reported sightings. Local Indigenous guides joined the search efforts, bringing their intimate knowledge of the terrain. But despite these extensive efforts, searchers found no trace of the men or their equipment. The harsh wilderness had apparently swallowed them completely, leaving no clues about their fate. But the photographs found in that cabin changed everything. The collection contained dozens of images documenting the expedition's journey into the forest. Most showed typical scenes you'd expect from a wilderness adventure: camps being set up, rivers being crossed, wildlife encounters, group portraits around evening fires. The quality of the photographs was remarkable, showing Chen's skill as a professional photographer. Nothing unusual at first glance. The final photograph in the collection was different. It showed the expedition's last camp, taken on what appeared to be their final evening together. The image was remarkably clear for its age, preserved perfectly by the sealed container. You could see all the details of their campsite with stunning clarity. Tents arranged in a circle, supplies stacked neatly, a campfire burning in the center, even individual pieces of equipment lying scattered about. It looked peaceful, almost serene. But Dr. Sarah Martinez, a forensic photographer brought in to analyze the images, noticed something deeply unsettling about that final photo. She was examining it under high-powered magnification when she started counting the shadows visible in the frame, following standard protocols for photographic analysis. In any photograph taken outdoors, shadows tell a story about what was present when the image was captured. Every person, every object, every tent should cast a shadow if the lighting conditions are right. And in this photograph, the late afternoon sun was clearly visible, creating distinct shadows across the entire campsite. Dr. Martinez counted the shadows of the tents. 5 shadows, corresponding to 5 tents. She counted the shadows of supply crates and equipment. Everything matched what was visible in the frame. Then she started counting the shadows of people. This is where things became disturbing. The photograph clearly showed 4 men standing around the campsite. You could see them plainly. Whitfield near his tent, Crawford by the fire, Chen holding his camera equipment, and Standing Bear organizing supplies. 4 men, clearly visible, but there were 5 human shadows on the ground. Dr. Martinez checked and rechecked her count using multiple analytical methods. She used different lighting techniques, adjusted the contrast levels, examined every inch of the photograph with specialized equipment. She brought in colleagues for independent verification. The result was always the same: 4 visible people, 5 distinct human shadows. 1 shadow belonged to someone who wasn't there. The 5th shadow was positioned between Whitfield and Crawford, right next to the campfire where the ground was clearly visible. It was the shadow of a person standing upright, arms at their sides, facing toward the camera. The shadow showed clear human proportions and appeared to be cast by someone of average height and build. But there was no one casting that shadow. The space where the person should have been was completely empty. This discovery prompted authorities to take a much closer look at Whitfield's journal entries, which had also been found in the container. The journals themselves were extensive, filled with detailed observations about wildlife, weather patterns, and geographical features. But the final week of entries revealed a growing sense of unease among the expedition members. October 12, 1906. Standing Bear insists we are being followed. Claims he has heard footsteps parallel to our own for the past 3 days. The rest of us have heard nothing, but his instincts have never been wrong before. October 14, 1906. Crawford swears he saw someone watching us from the tree line last night. When we investigated this morning, we found no tracks, no signs of human presence, but the feeling of being observed grows stronger each day. October 16, 1906. Something is very wrong here. Reed counted our supplies this morning and found food missing from our carefully maintained inventory. Not taken by animals, which would leave obvious signs. Carefully removed, as if by human hands that knew exactly what they were looking for. We are being stalked by someone or something that knows how to remain invisible. The final entry was dated October 18, 1906, the same day the mysterious photograph was taken. We have decided to make our stand here. Whatever has been following us, watching us, stealing from us, we will face it tonight. Standing Bear has prepared protective charms according to his ancestral traditions. Chen has rigged his camera with a timer mechanism to document whatever happens. If we do not survive this encounter, may these records serve as a warning to others who venture into these cursed woods. But the investigation was about to reveal something even more chilling. Historians decided to cross-reference Whitfield's expedition records with the official documentation from the Thunder Bay authorities who had organized the original search efforts. They also examined ship manifests, supply purchase records, and insurance documents related to the expedition. According to the official records, only 4 men had departed on the expedition: Marcus Whitfield, James Crawford, David Chen, and William Standing Bear. There was no mention anywhere of a 5th team member named Thomas Reed. Yet Reed appeared in multiple journal entries throughout the expedition. Whitfield wrote about him regularly, describing his work managing supplies, his conversations around the campfire, his opinions on navigation decisions, and his growing concern about their mysterious stalker. Reed seemed like a fully realized person with his own personality and expertise. He was clearly a real person, at least in Whitfield's mind. Dr. Martinez went back to examine all the other photographs in the collection with this new information. In every single image that showed the full expedition team, she could identify 4 men, never 5. But in many of the photos, particularly those taken in the final weeks, there were 5 shadows visible on the ground. The shadow of Thomas Reed had been following the expedition from the very beginning, present but not visible, watching but never seen, documented in shadows but absent from light. But who was Thomas Reed? And why could only Whitfield see him? Local indigenous elders, when shown the photographs and journal entries, recognized the pattern immediately. According to Anishinaabe tradition, when someone ventures too deep into the sacred places of the forest, they sometimes attract the attention of what they call a follower spirit. This entity attaches itself to living people, becoming visible only to those it intends to claim. The spirit appears first as shadows, then begins manifesting as a false person that only the targeted individual can see. It integrates itself into the victim's daily life, becoming so real in their perception that they trust it completely. But the spirit's ultimate purpose is to lead its victims away from safety, deeper into the wilderness, until they become lost forever. Elder Joseph Kingbird, whose great-grandfather had known William Standing Bear personally, explained the traditional understanding of these entities. The follower spirit mimics human behavior perfectly. It acts like a helpful companion, earning trust over time. But it is not human. It is something else, something hungry, that feeds on the life force of those who wander too far from home. This explanation cast Whitfield's journal entries in a terrifying new light. Throughout the expedition, he had consistently described Thomas Reed as helpful and reliable. Reed was always the one suggesting they venture deeper into unexplored territory. Reed was always the one encouraging them to stay longer in dangerous areas. Reed was always the one pushing them further from civilization. The expedition had been manipulated from the beginning by something that existed only in shadows and in Whitfield's compromised perception. The other team members couldn't see Reed, but they trusted Whitfield's judgment enough to follow his lead, even when that lead was being provided by an entity that wanted them dead. The final photograph now told a complete story. It wasn't just documenting their last camp. It was documenting the moment when the follower spirit was about to claim its victims. The shadow standing by the fire belonged to Thomas Reed, finally ready to reveal his true nature to the entire expedition team. What happened next can only be imagined, but the evidence suggests it was swift and final. No human remains were ever found in that area of the forest. No equipment was ever recovered. It was as if 5 men had simply vanished into thin air, leaving behind only shadows and memories. The metal container found beneath the cabin floorboards had been hidden there by someone who escaped long enough to preserve the truth. Most likely William Standing Bear, who would have understood the spiritual nature of their pursuer and known the importance of leaving a warning for future generations. But Standing Bear's final act of preservation came at a cost. According to the construction workers who found the container, the cabin showed signs of having been abandoned. Suddenly, food was left on the table. Clothes were scattered on the floor, and the door had been left wide open. Whoever hid those photographs had done so in desperate haste before disappearing forever. The discovery of Whitfield's photographs created a sensation in both archaeological and paranormal research communities. The images are now housed in the Canadian Museum of History, where they continue to be studied by experts trying to understand the nature of the shadowy presence that stalked the expedition. Dr. Martinez has spent years analyzing every detail of those photographs. Her conclusion remains unchanged. The shadows in the images are real, cast by something physical enough to block sunlight but invisible to the camera lens. Whatever Thomas Reed actually was, he existed in some form during those final weeks of the expedition. Modern attempts to locate the expedition's final campsite have been unsuccessful. GPS coordinates derived from landmarks visible in the photographs lead search teams to areas where no signs of human presence can be found. It's as if the location itself has been erased from the physical world, existing now only in those haunting images. The Canadian government has since restricted access to the region where Whitfield's expedition disappeared. Official reports cite environmental protection concerns and sensitive wildlife habitats, but local residents know the real reason. Too many modern explorers have reported strange experiences in those woods, shadows that move independently of any visible figures, voices calling from empty clearings, the persistent feeling of being followed by someone who isn't there. 3 separate search and rescue operations in the area have resulted in missing persons cases that remain unsolved to this day. Each time, the missing individuals were experienced outdoors people who should have been able to navigate the terrain safely. Each time, their final known locations were within miles of where Whitfield's expedition was last seen. The pattern suggests that whatever claimed the 1906 expedition is still active in those forests. Still waiting, still watching, still casting shadows where no figure stands. Park rangers now carry strict instructions about that region. Groups larger than 2 people are forbidden from entering. Solo hikers are turned away entirely. Even authorized research teams must check in every 6 hours by radio, and any missed communication triggers an immediate emergency response. But the most chilling aspect of the Whitfield case isn't what happened to the expedition members, it's what the discovery of their photographs revealed about the nature of reality itself. How many other historical disappearances involved similar supernatural stalkers? How many missing person cases throughout history were actually encounters with follower spirits that left no trace behind? The shadows in Marcus Whitfield's final photograph represent more than just a single tragic expedition. They represent a crack in our understanding of the world around us, a glimpse into forces that operate just beyond the edge of human perception. So the next time you're exploring wild places, pay attention to your shadows. Count them carefully, because sometimes the most dangerous threats are the ones that exist in darkness while remaining invisible in light. And remember, there are stories buried in the deep places of the world that history has tried to forget, But the shadows always remember. If you found this story as disturbing as I did, hit that like button and subscribe for more mysteries that challenge everything we think we know about reality. Let me know in the comments what you think really happened to Whitfield's expedition. And remember, some shadows are cast by things that were never meant to be seen.